Good things done by bad people. Have you ever heard a name so infamous that the world instinctively recoils? Names tied to genocide, war, torture, terrorism, names we associate with pure evil. But what if I told you that, hidden deep in their darkness, were a few oddly bright moments? No, this isn't a video meant to defend or redeem villains. It's about history's strange contradictions, like Hitler wanting to build a family-friendly car, or Ted Bundy. Yes, that Ted Bundy volunteering at a suicide hotline, or the Yakuza, Japan's notorious mafia, being first to respond to earthquake victims. Disturbing? Absolutely. But that's exactly why it's worth telling. Number 1. Adolf Hitler. When you hear the name Adolf Hitler, you probably think of genocide, war, and dictatorship, not affordable family cars. But oddly enough, one of Hitler's early ambitions was just that, to create a people's car that every German family could own. That idea became the foundation of Volkswagen, literally meaning the people's car in German. In 1937, Volkswagen was established in Wolfsburg, and with help from engineer Ferdinand Porsche, the now iconic Beetle was designed. At the time, car ownership was rare in Germany. This plan looked like a progressive step forward, if only on the surface, because of course, the story gets darker. When World War II broke out, production of the Beetle stopped, and the factory was converted to build tanks for the Nazi war machine. Even worse, over 15,000 forced laborers, many from concentration camps, were used to keep that factory running. After the war, the Volkswagen project could have ended there. The British considered dismantling it altogether. They even offered it to Henry Ford for free. He declined. Ironically, no one wanted Hitler's dream. But a German engineer named Heinrich Nordhoff stepped in and revived Volkswagen under British supervision. The company was rebuilt, the Beetle improved, and the car eventually became one of the best-selling vehicles of all time. So, no, Hitler didn't create the success of Volkswagen. He had an idea, but it was born in darkness, built by slaves, and abandoned before it ever reached the public. The true legacy of the Beetle came not from the dictator who dreamed it up, but from those who rebuilt it after the war. And yet, it's still unsettling to realize that one of the world's most beloved cars has roots in one of history's darkest chapters.
Oh.
Would you still drive one? Number 2. Ferdinand Porsche. Ferdinand. Porsche is often remembered as a brilliant automotive engineer, the mind behind the iconic Volkswagen Beetle, and the founder of Porsche, one of the world's most luxurious sports car brands. Name evokes speed, precision, and innovation. But beneath the polished metal of his legacy lies something far darker. Porsche wasn't just an engineer. He was also an honorary SS Oberfuhrer, a senior figure in Nazi Germany's paramilitary forces. During World War II, he didn't just design civilian vehicles. He helped develop Tiger tanks, monstrous machines that terrorized Allied troops. On the Eastern Front, he also contributed to the creation of Nazi bomber aircraft. In short, his engineering genius served both consumer mobility and wartime destruction. But here's where it gets ironic, almost absurd. Decades before his involvement with Nazi Germany, in the year 1900, Ferdinand Porsche unveiled what many consider to be the world's first gasoline-electric hybrid vehicle, the loaner Porsche Electromobile. That's right. More than a century before Tesla, Porsche was already experimenting with clean energy vehicles. So how do we reconcile this? The man who helped usher in sustainable mobility also helped build tools of war. The same name found on luxury EVs like the Porsche Taycan once sat on the blueprints for tanks that ravaged cities. It's a contradiction so sharp, it leaves a scar. Today, people drive Porsches for the thrill, the style, the prestige. But few realize their sleek machines trace back to someone who stood at the intersection of technological brilliance and one of history's darkest regimes. Can someone invent the future while helping destroy the present? Apparently, yes. Number 3. Saddam Hussein. When you hear the name Saddam Hussein, free healthcare is probably the last thing that comes to mind. More likely, you think of war, dictatorship, chemical weapons, or perhaps the televised fall of a statue in Baghdad. But in the 1980s, under Saddam's rule, Iraq had something that would make even developed countries raise an eyebrow: a robust, fully government-funded healthcare system. Yes, really. During this period, Iraq was flush with oil money. The country invested heavily in public infrastructure, including hospitals, clinics, and medical universities. Iraqi citizens, regardless of income, had access to free doctor visits, medications, surgeries, and hospital care. At the time, it was arguably one of the most comprehensive public healthcare systems in the Middle East. Sounds progressive, doesn't it? A dictator who gives his people free healthcare. How's that for a plot twist? But of course, the story doesn't end there. It never does. In the 1990s, Iraq was hit by a series of crushing international sanctions following the Gulf War. Oil exports were restricted, economic collapse followed, and the state's ability to provide free services disintegrated. Hospitals ran out of medicine. Equipment broke down and wasn't replaced. Doctors fled the country. What was once a shining example of social welfare turned into a tragic reminder that even the best intentions, or in this case, the most politically useful gestures, can't survive in a collapsing regime. So was Saddam genuinely trying to improve his people's lives? Or was it just another tool in the dictator's playbook, offering services to gain loyalty while maintaining control through fear? It's hard to say. But here's what we do know. Even while hospitals were being built, Saddam was also building torture chambers. While children were receiving vaccines, Kurds were being gassed. While doctors treated flu symptoms, political dissidents were disappearing. It's a moral paradox. A man capable of overseeing genocide also created a healthcare system that saved lives. So the next time someone says nobody's purely evil, remember Saddam Hussein? He handed out medicine with one hand and wielded power through brutality with the other. Number 4. Ted Bundy. Imagine calling a suicide prevention hotline in the middle of your darkest hour. The voice on the other end, the one gently coaxing you away from the edge, is Ted Bundy. Yes, that Ted Bundy. One of the most notorious serial killers in American history, once volunteered at a crisis center in Seattle, offering emotional support to people contemplating ending their lives. It's an irony so sharp it borders on satire. The man who would go on to murder dozens of young women and girls spent part of his early life actively trying to save strangers from death. Or at least that's what it looked like on the surface. Why would he do this? Some say it was simply to earn volunteer hours for his psychology studies. Others believe he was studying the human mind, trying to understand vulnerability and mimic empathy, something psychopaths notoriously lack. And then there's the darker theory that Bundy was drawn to the idea of power, having someone's life in his hands, even in a completely legal, benevolent setting. Was it performance? Research? A twisted kind of thrill? We'll never really know. Bundy was never pressed on this part of his past. He had far too many other crimes to answer for. But the fact remains, one of America's most brutal killers once talked people out of killing themselves. It's a chilling reminder of how convincingly evil can wear the mask of compassion. Ted Bundy didn't always appear as a monster. Sometimes he appeared as a calm, helpful voice on the other end of the line, a devil with the tone of a guardian angel. Number 5. John Wayne Gacy. Imagine a friendly neighborhood man, someone who throws block parties, volunteers at children's hospitals, and even dresses up as a clown to make kids laugh. Sounds like the kind of guy you'd want living next door. Right. Now imagine that same man is also responsible for the rape, torture, and murder of over 30 young boys and men, many of whom were buried beneath his own house. That's John Wayne Gacy. To the public, Gacy was a well-liked community figure. In 1970s suburban Chicago, he ran a successful construction business, was involved in local politics, became known as Pogo the Clown, a character he created to entertain children at hospitals and charity events. By all appearances, he was just another helpful, cheerful member of society, but behind closed doors, he was a monster, hiding in plain sight. Gacy's home doubled as a personal graveyard. Over the course of several years, he lured boys and young men to his house, some with promises of jobs, others with charm, and committed unimaginable atrocities. He buried many of the bodies beneath his crawlspace, living his double life without suspicion for years. Yet what's most disturbing isn't just the evil committed, it's how effective he was at concealing it. The same man who organized cheerful neighborhood events, often attended by law enforcement, was the very person they should have feared. His public acts of goodness served not as redemption, but as camouflage. A predator disguised as a clown. It's tempting to view. His volunteer work is evidence of duality, proof that even the worst people can do something kind. But in Gacy's case, the line between kindness and manipulation becomes dangerously blurry. Were those hospital visits truly for the children? Or were they for his own sense of power, or to lower people's suspicion? Some children met Pogo the clown and got a balloon. Others met John Wayne Gacy and were never seen again. Gacy didn't do good things in spite of being evil. He did them because they made his evil easier to hide. Sometimes the most terrifying monsters don't wear masks. They paint them on, smile for the crowd, and blend right in. Number 6. Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan is remembered as one of history's most ruthless. Conqueror is a man whose armies razed cities, slaughtered millions, and left entire civilizations in ashes. His name alone evoked terror across continents, and the Mongol Empire he built stretched farther than any before it. But here's something unexpected. Despite his brutal legacy, Genghis Khan was remarkably tolerant when it came to religion. Under his rule, Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, and native shamanistic faiths were all allowed to flourish. Religious leaders were granted protection. Places of worship were respected. Mongol law even exempted clergy from taxes. For a man known for rivers of blood, he seemed surprisingly open to spiritual diversity. Was this tolerance rooted in personal belief, or was it just brilliant strategy? After all, when you're governing one of the largest empires in history, banning dozens of cultures and countless belief systems, it's probably easier to allow religious freedom than to enforce religious conformity. By embracing tolerance, Genghis ensured loyalty, minimized rebellion, and kept his empire relatively stable despite its overwhelming diversity. So was Genghis Khan, a forward-thinking leader ahead of his time, or just a master manipulator who knew that tolerance was cheaper than war? Maybe both. It's a strange twist in history. The man who devastated the world physically also allowed it to thrive spiritually. Number 7. Pablo Escobar. Pablo Escobar is one of the most infamous drug lords in history, responsible for flooding the U.S. with cocaine during the 1980s and early 90s. His cartel left a trail of violence, corruption, and death across Colombia and beyond. He bribed officials, assassinated rivals, and turned Medellin into one of the most dangerous places on earth. And yet, in the very city he terrorized, many remembered him as a hero. Why? Because while Escobar was fueling addiction and chaos abroad, he was building houses, clinics, schools, and soccer fields for Colombia's poorest citizens. Entire neighborhoods owe their existence to his generosity. Families who once slept under tarps were suddenly living in homes with solid roofs, thanks to the fortune he made off the suffering of millions. To some, he was a modern-day Robin Hood. To others, just a ruthless criminal buying loyalty with blood money. So which was it? For a mother who'd spent years watching her children sleep in the dirt, does it matter where the money came from? If now, finally, they have clean water, electricity, and a future? It's a moral knot with no easy answer. Escobar destroyed countless lives while saving others. He murdered judges and journalists while paying for school books and medicine. He built an empire of narcotics and used it to build real communities, a villain who gave back, or a killer who knew generosity. Made for good camouflage? Maybe both. Maybe that's what makes him so terrifying. Number 8. Al Capone. Al Capone is a name forever tied to American organized crime. During the Prohibition era, he ruled the Chicago underworld with an iron fist, smuggling illegal alcohol, bribing officials, and orchestrating violence that left countless dead. He was the classic mob boss, charming in public, ruthless in private, but during the Great Depression, when millions of Americans were unemployed and starving, Capone did something unexpected. He opened a soup kitchen. Located in Chicago, his soup kitchen fed thousands of hungry people every day, free of charge. Lines stretched around the block. The sign outside read, "Free soup, coffee, and donuts for the unemployed." For many, it was their only meal of the day. Why would a gangster feed the poor? Some say it was genuine compassion. Others think it was pure PR, a way to polish his image and keep public sympathy on his side. After all, it's harder to arrest someone the people adore, especially when he's feeding their children. Capone understood something politicians sometimes forget. When the system fails the people, even a criminal can look like a savior. Of course, no amount of hot soup erases the blood on his hands. He didn't stop being a mobster. He didn't stop killing or extorting. But for those standing in line during a freezing Chicago winter, he was the man who helped them survive. A criminal feeding the hungry, a murderer playing humanitarian. Does that make him good? Not really. But it makes him complicated, and that's what's worth remembering. Number 9. Yakuza. In 2011. When a devastating earthquake and tsunami struck Japan, entire communities were reduced to rubble. The country was in chaos, power grids collapsed, supplies ran dry, and thousands were left stranded. And yet before the government could fully mobilize, and even before official disaster relief teams arrived, help came from an unexpected source: the Yakuza. Yes, the infamous Japanese crime syndicates typically known for extortion, illegal gambling, and black market dealings were among the first to provide aid. They delivered truckloads of water, food, blankets, and emergency supplies to shelters in affected areas. Some reports even claimed they opened their own offices to house displaced families. Was this compassion, a sense of duty, or something far more strategic? It's no secret that the Yakuza have always maintained a strange, semi-visible role in Japanese society. While technically criminal organizations, they often present themselves as protectors of order in times of chaos. By stepping in before official aid could arrive, they weren't just helping, they were making a statement. We can take care of the people better than the government. Of course, this generosity came with layers. The media coverage earned them goodwill. It softened public perception. It reinforced the myth that the Yakuza operate with the code criminals. Yes, but honorable ones. But let's not forget, behind the relief efforts were the same groups engaged in drug trafficking, human exploitation, and organized violence. Their aid may have been real, but so were their motives. Was it kindness, or a carefully calculated PR move? Maybe both, because even in the aftermath of disaster, power like water flows to whoever arrives first. Number 10. Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden, one of the most infamous names in modern history. Mastermind of the 9/11 attacks, founder of Al-Qaeda, and the face of global terrorism. His actions reshaped international policy, launched wars, and cost countless lives. But like many on this list, his story contains strange contradictions before becoming the world's most wanted man. Bin Laden reportedly funded infrastructure projects in countries like Sudan and Afghanistan. Schools, roads, and even hospitals, built with money that would later bankroll acts of terror. These efforts won him local support, painting him not just as a jihadist leader, but as a benefactor to the poor. Of course, these weren't acts of charity. They were chess moves, buying influence, loyalty, and protection in areas where governments had failed to provide basic services. Still, contradiction doesn't end there. After his death, U.S. forces seized bin Laden's computer. What they found was unexpected, to say the least. Mixed in with extremist propaganda were files like Super Mario Brothers, Tom and Jerry cartoons, funny cat videos, and even a recording of bin Laden reportedly singing Lady Gaga's Poker Face. Yes, really, the man who orchestrated one of the deadliest terrorist attacks in history. He's also had a soft spot for retro games and viral internet humor. It's a surreal image. A warlord in hiding. It's laughing at a cat video or playing Mario while the world hunts him down. A reminder that even monsters have oddly mundane moments, that horror and humanity can exist in the same breath. Chilling? Absolutely. but maybe that's what makes it so important to remember. Asterisk, asterisk, if you found this video thought-provoking, disturbing, or just plain fascinating, consider supporting the channel. A like, comment, or subscription goes a long way in helping us bring more strange, complex, and morbidly curious stories from history to light. Got an idea for the next topic? Want a part 2, maybe about great people who did terrible things? Let us know below. Thanks for watching, and remember, history isn't always black and white. Sometimes it's a very, very dark gray.